Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Richard and welcome back to another stock market outlook video. As always, we'll talk about how the indexes are performing, how the leading stocks are acting in the market, and we'll also go over how my previous watchlist performed over this past week. And we'll also consult the IBD Big Picture article as well as the GMI signal, and we'll put all of that information together and determine what the current trend of the market is. And then, based on that determination, you can decide how conservative or aggressive you want to be in taking up new positions. So let's get into it and talk about the indexes on a weekly time frame. So let me hide these drawings right here and let's analyze this past bar from the NASDAQ. So overall we gapped up, which is always scary, but we had a very strong week closing right near the high of the trading range, 98%. And overall we were up 4.78% on the NASDAQ, which is very impressive and very strong action. And from this weekly bar, the expectation is we either continue up or consolidate a little bit and go sideways. And looking at the S&P 500, you can see that it wasn't quite as strong as the NASDAQ, and it is still consolidating this move somewhat from the lows. But overall, it still was a positive week. We were up 1.76%, and we had a nice positive reversal in there, which indicates strength. And overall, you can see we had a nice trading range once again at 97%. So once again, the expectation is we either go sideways or continue upwards. But looking at the IWM, this definitely is the weakest of the major indexes because you can see we gapped up, went all the way down to 137, but we were not able to recover the open, and overall we were down 0.77% for the week. And the IWM is below a declining 30-week moving average, so it is in a stage 4 decline. And going back to the S&P 500, you can see we're now well above the declining 30-week moving average, so we are currently in a stage 1. And if this 30-week moving average starts to curl up, we could join the NASDAQ and start a stage 2 in the general market, which I think would be very bullish. So overall, from the weekly bars, the price action was strong, and now let's take it day by day. And overall, for this week on the NASDAQ, we continued on from the momentum of the previous week, rallying off the 21 EMA. And overall, on this Monday right here, we had a strong day, up 2.54% with a nice closing range as well. On Tuesday, we did have a slight negative. You can see we tried to push upwards, but were knocked down and closed right near the low of the trading range. But we recovered nicely on Wednesday, where we gapped up, moved down to this low right here at around 10,500, but then rallied strongly into the close. And then on Thursday, we had a nice constructive day, a gap up, a move down all the way down here, but then a strong recovery towards the end of the day. And that momentum carried on into Friday, where we kind of opened flat, moved down, but then once again had a very strong rally. So I love this pattern of strong endings to the day. On 4 of the 5 days, we had very strong closes, which I take as a positive. So now let's check out how gold performed last week, and you can see it is moving higher from this breakout, although it did drop on Thursday and Friday, and we did see a drop on volume this past Thursday. And looking at the VIX, you can see that volatility is trending nicely downwards, which is what I like to see. And we saw a nice drop on Friday as well. Ideally, this would drop below the low of this day, which was 24.92, and ideally below this low right here, which was 23.54. That would be a very promising sign. But overall, the VIX is trending nicely downwards, which is what I like to see as a trend follower. And looking at the FFTY, you can see that it's trending nicely upwards, meaning that growth stocks are doing quite well. And overall, we broke through this kind of gap that it formed when we did drop in late February, which is a positive sign. And we did have some strong reversals last week on volume. So nice to see that the FFTY is doing well. That indicates that growth stocks are doing well overall. And finally, looking at the XLF, the financials, you can see that we're still trending downwards and we're still not quite rallying strongly, but we did have a very positive day on this past Friday. You can see we were up 3.44% on above average volume. So as always, I would like to see the XLF rally strongly and try to break above this resistance point right here. So overall, that is how the major indexes that I like to keep track of are doing. And now let's talk about the true market leaders and how they performed last week. And looking at the potential true market leaders, you can see that on this Friday, there was a lot of red, honestly. But overall, still losses were minimized below 2% for most of it. You did have some selling in Fastly, which has been just going off like a rocket here. But overall, still price action for the week was very strong, and you have a lot of great performances, and only 2 stocks were red on the week, which is definitely an indication of strong price action. And the best gainers on the week were LVGO, which we'll talk about in just a second, going over my watch list of 40% after gapping up on Tuesday. And we also had some nice performances from ZS, Teladoc, Nvidia, CrowdStrike, and overall the true market leaders still seem to be acting quite well and trending above those key moving averages. So with that said, the true market leaders look healthy, and now let's talk about my weekly watch list from this past Sunday. And I'll be posting my next one tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe if you're looking forward to that. And now let's talk about how this list performed. So overall on the week, we only had 2 negatives, Team and Axon, and Team still is pretty much just consolidating right near all-time highs, still looks constructive, and Axon was selling off a little bit, but not on higher volume, as you can see. So if this starts moving up, has a green dot, that would present another potential entry. And you could also use this high right here, this kind of pivot point, as an indication of resistance. And if it breaks above that, that could be another potential entry point. But overall, we had some very strong performances. LVGO, ACMR, ZS, all finishing above 10%. And you also have a bunch of 5% gainers to 7% gainers. But overall, the king this week definitely was LVGO, which I'm fortunate enough to own, which is great. I said in my weekly watch list video that this is a potential swing trade based off the short consolidation here, but it increased 40% on the week. So if you bought it on this Monday, which it was showing a green dot early in the day, this could be a potential longer term hold because you've now built up a cushion. But overall, looking at the 65-minute chart, I love this pattern that's going on right here. All the up bars are much larger than the down bars, which is very constructive. And overall, when it's selling off, it's on lower volume, and I love how tight it's acting during these bars right here. And moving on, we've got ACMR, which also had a strong breakout in the week. And you can see on Monday, it gapped up 22%, a very strong day. And over the course of the next couple of days, it just kind of consolidated and slowly drifted higher. ZS also moved up well from the bounce off the 21 EMA that had started a few weeks ago, and overall is still acting well and actually had an inside day on this Friday, which is very constructive. Teladoc also just kind of drifted higher from the green dot. CrowdStrike continued higher after breaking through the green line once again, which is very constructive. And Dexcom as well drifted higher from its green dot entry and broke out above this short-term pivot right here. So that is how my previous watch list performed, and we'll see how the next one does in this upcoming week. So with that said, let's go ahead and check out the sentiment surveys. All right, so here is the most recent survey that I posted last night. And overall, you can see a big jump from 43% bullishness to now 53%. And this definitely is on the higher end. I think I posted some polls and there's been 51%, 52%. So this should be kind of an indication that there's definitely a lot of bullishness, which could be a negative. That could mean that we are going to pull back slightly and have a mild correction. And it's also important to keep in mind that the true market leaders, I should have said this earlier, are a bit extended at this point. And for me, they're too extended, too far from proper buy points, and their 10-4 stochastics are in the 90s, high 80s, and there's not really any of them setting up at this time. So another thing to keep in mind is that the true market leaders are acting well, but they are extended from their proper buy points. So with that in mind, you might want to be ready to be a bit defensive if we do have a mild correction. So that pretty much covers sentiment, and now let's talk about the IBD Big Picture article. So overall, they talk about how the stock market ends week on a high note, and is the S&P 500 poised for a breakout? And overall, they discuss a strong end to the week, but they do also point out that the indexes are now trending towards the top of the upper channel, which has caused kind of slight pullbacks in the past. But these pullbacks have been contained by the 21-day moving averages, and they also talk about the strength in the bank stocks, Goldman Sachs, and JP Morgan. Earnings are coming up now, and financial earnings are among the earliest ones that report, so keep that in mind next week. But overall, they talk about how the NASDAQ was very strong and how we did drop a distribution day on the NASDAQ. So overall, at this time, we only have 4 distribution days on the S&P 500. And they also talk about how the leading stocks in the IBD 50 performed, and they also talk about how to deal with big gains by either letting it ride, taking some off, or potentially waiting for a test of the 21-day moving averages. So they also point out that there's a couple growth stocks still near buy points, BJ, Atlassian, Team, MSCI, and ILMN. So that is the IBD big picture article, and overall their view is the current outlook is still a confirmed uptrend, and as I said, there are only 4 distribution days on the S&P 500. And now moving on to Wishing Well blog, you can see that the GMI signal is still green, which is a positive, but Dr. Wish has been posting some more conservative articles talking about the weakness in the Dow Jones and how the T2108 is now in a blue-white-red downtrend. And ideally, we would like to see this move up again and see more stocks supporting this rally. And the T2108, if you're not familiar with what it is the percentage of stocks above the 40-day, their 40-day moving averages. So ideally, we'd like to see this move up and support this rally as a whole. But overall, my view is we are still in a confirmed uptrend, and I'm fully invested at this time, so I'm not looking to buy new positions. I'm just managing my current ones. But overall, I think the true market leaders are acting incredibly strong, and this is a very, very strong bull market. That doesn't mean that we won't have pullbacks. We certainly will, but I think they will be buyable. You just have to make sure that you're buying stocks at proper low-risk setups. So that's pretty much my analysis. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please go ahead and leave a like down below. If you have any questions or comments, let me know down below as well. And I'll see you guys in future videos.